catching up with it at church. So hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, baby. Hi from the Teglers. Josh.
Becky.
Lydia.
And Caleb. We miss you and hope to see you all soon. Bye.
Hey, church family, we miss you. Have a great Sunday.
Hi there. Welcome to Community Church. My name is John. We're glad you're here. As we start looking to the future, particularly in June, we're going to start having some different options for service. One of those being on-site community groups. I encourage you to go to our website, fayette.church/next steps, and look at the opportunities that are coming ahead for us in terms of watching services in smaller groups and eventually getting back to normal. Also, you can check out ways that you can serve. You can look at different things that you can do to get involved in the church, as well as ways that maybe we can help you. I hope you enjoy today's service, and I hope that it's a nice weather. We get a little break from this rain so you can enjoy some time outside. Have a good one. Hope you enjoy.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are.
Hi, I'm Andy. Thanks for joining us. Can you think of a time in your life where you had a bad taste stuck in your mouth? Yeah, you can think of a whole bunch of examples probably. You know, maybe that time you went to a restaurant and you had something there and it just didn't taste right and it kind of stuck with you the rest of the day. Or maybe it's that first time you tried coffee or tobacco and it just kind of left this kind of flavor in your mouth. Or maybe you drank orange juice after brushing your teeth with that mint toothpaste. You know, maybe it's a nasty flavor that's stuck in your mouth. I think of when I was a kid having cough syrup. They had that cherry flavored. Let me tell you, that was not cherry. And it was so disgusting. I still remember that nasty flavor. And maybe it's just a nasty flavor, you know, when you think of, I'll give you a little warning here, you know, if you have a weak stomach. When you vomit, you know, and that lingering kind of nasty taste that gets stuck in your mouth, I want to introduce you to our sponsor of today's video, Twizzlers. Okay, not really, because I loved Twizzlers when I was a kid. I ate a whole bunch of them all the time. And one moment when I was like 5 or 6, I had a whole bunch of them, so much that I got really, really sick. And to this day, I want nothing to do with Twizzlers. I mean, they just evoke that kind of barf reflex, if I could say that, and that bad taste that is stuck in my mouth. You know, maybe it's a surprise flavor. You know, you're biting into that dill pickle and you find out it's a sweet pickle. Ugh! Or I think of a moment when my wife went to a church potluck and a lady come up to her and say, "Hey, you got to try my deviled eggs." And so Leah bites into this deviled egg and Leah says, "Wow, it has a unique flavor to it. What's in here?" And the lady's like, "I'm glad you noticed. It's a new recipe. I put peanut butter and jelly in that deviled egg." Ugh, that just doesn't seem right. There's also that moment where I went to Quick Star, and maybe you're not from this part of the Midwest, but Quick Star is the best gas station that I know of because they have sandwiches. Like, you can just go in there and grab whatever sandwich you want, like anything your heart desires. And so I always choose Quick Star over Casey's because Quick Star is superior because of the sandwiches. And their favorite sandwich that I have there is the barbecue rib. And so one night I went in there and grabbed a barbecue rib sandwich and I headed out to the car and it's dark and I'm driving and eating it. And I taste the very first bite and I was like, this is the weirdest barbecue rib I've ever had. In fact, it tasted a lot like fish and cheese. So that's what it was. Let me tell you, fish and cheese from a gas station is just not right. You know, maybe there's been bad taste in your mouth that more than just food, maybe experiences you've had. Maybe there was an impression that somebody left on you. You know, maybe first time you met somebody and you're just like, you know, they I don't like them. Or conversation that you had with somebody that just didn't go very well, and you're like, that left a bad taste in my mouth. Maybe something somebody said to you, or at a young age maybe, that you still remember. I can still remember hurtful things that somebody said to me when I was a kid, and it left that bad taste in my mouth, that impression. I got to thinking, though, are there things that Christians have said or done that have left a bad taste in the mouths of people? Of course there has been, right? In fact, some of you watching today have had a really, really terrible taste in your mouth because of something that Christians have said. Maybe it was a church person, maybe it was a pastor or a church in general, something they said, something they implied. Maybe they treated you subpar. And I want to applaud you, first of all, for watching a church service right now. And maybe you're still hurt by it. Maybe it still has left this bitter taste in your mouth. And in fact, I came up with a list of things that for myself, and talking for a whole bunch of other people too, that of things that have left a bad taste in their mouth from Christians, from religious people. And we'll get to that in a moment, but in case you decide that you want to skip out on the rest of the video, I want to get right to the application and just kind of share it with you right now. The first point I'm going to share is that Christians, you need to stop being judgmental jerks. Okay? And maybe you're one of those people that have had a bad taste in your mouth because of something that Christian has said or done to you. And I want to let you know that you're not alone. Okay, let's get back to the list. I asked several people, some of them who do not share the same faith perspective as me, and I asked them this question, and I compiled a list. I asked, what has left you with a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to Christians, church, and religion? And what I found was pretty startling, although not completely surprising. What I found out is that there was a lot of similarities. And so here's the list of things that people said that has left a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to Christians, is that this holier-than-thou attitude. Some shared that it was the politically driven Christians, the Christians who are anti-everything. Several told me something very interesting, and here's what they said: that the judgmental attitudes toward people, that you have to go to church to worship God or believe in God. Several said that they feel judged by them not going to church on a regular basis by Christians, almost that they're treated subpar when it comes to that. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Some shared that Christians who attend church but treat others like crap when they leave the building. Hypocrites have left a bad taste in their mouth. Those who put on a fake smile. The Christians who don't listen but just want to preach to you. Those who point out some sins of people more than others when they themselves have sin in their own life. What would you add to this list? I encourage you to reach out to me and share. Maybe there's an area that a Christian or a church person has left this bad taste in your mouth. All right, well, let's get back to the application. Let's revisit this application. Christians, stop being judgmental jerks. I'll just leave it at there for now. But I want to address those of you maybe who've had this bad taste in your mouth from church people, from religious people. I want to let you know you're not alone. In fact, in Matthew 23 in the Bible, Matthew was a guy who wrote about Jesus' life and teachings, so much of Jesus' ministry while Jesus was on earth. Matthew records it. And he records in Matthew 23, Jesus gives this whole list of things. He creates this list of the religious people of that day and the bad taste that they left in not only in Jesus' mouth, but in the mouths of others. This impressions that they left on them. And I'm not going to read the whole list. But what's funny, though, is if you put your list and that list that I shared next to Jesus' list, you actually find out that they're virtually the same list. Okay, so here's the thing. Jesus actually talks about the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. These are religious people. But he's not just saying that all of them are that way. So often we just say all Christians are this way, because we've been hurt or whatever. But Jesus is actually, he's pointing out more so this attitude that prevailed in a lot of the situations here. This bad taste of it that's left in their mouth. And so I want to give you a summary of what Jesus lists. And then I want to focus on just a couple things. And Jesus tells about these religious people saying they don't practice what they preach. That they want to be seen as holy in the sight of others. that they're pursuing power and position. Jesus even uses this imagery of that they shut the door of heaven in people's faces. He says that they're greedy, that they deny responsibility, that these people give the impression that they're holy on the outside, but inside they're really full of greed and self-indulgence. Then Jesus calls them a whole bunch of pretty harsh names. He says that they're blind guides, they're hypocrites. In other words, they're posers. He says that they're child of hell. He calls them blind guides, blind fools, snakes, brood of vipers. And some of you, who've had this bad taste in your mouth because of Christians could probably add a whole bunch of other choice words to describe what these people are like. These aren't flattering terms that Jesus uses. And Jesus gives a few examples of what they do. And I encourage you to read Matthew 23 for yourself later. He gives a whole bunch of different examples. But I want to look at one particular example where Jesus points out things that these religious people were doing. You can find it in a super easy to remember verse, Matthew 23:23. In Matthew 23:23, Jesus says here, he hones in this very specific example. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin." I'll stop there for a moment. God had instructed his people to give a tenth of everything that they earn. So even if they earn a crop, they were to give 10% of it away. If they were to earn a certain amount of money, they were to give this 10% or this tithe. We use that term in the church world today, tithe. And we still challenge those of you who are partnering with our church. We say, it's important that you give a tenth of your income, to support the ministry of the church or whatever. So Jesus isn't really mad at the fact that they're tithing, that they're giving this 10%. He's not slamming the concept of the tithe, but in fact, look what he says. He says, you give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin. But catch this part. He says, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Jesus is saying you're honing in on one area of Scripture and you feel like a good person because you do it. Maybe it's like, I give to the church, or I attend church, or I do this super spiritual thing or whatever. And those things, sometimes they're not unvaluable things, but what happens is one commentator says, he says, you miss the point of true religion by focusing on the minute and externals rather than the essentials of the sort of life God really desires. You're majoring on the minors. This will be a really good place right now to plug where we're headed with our teaching series starting this next week. As we go into this series called For the Win, we're going to be talking about what are those things that God defines as a win? What are those things that really matter to God? And the harsh reality is the things that we think are valuable and are wins really aren't all that important to God. And so if we get back to Matthew 23, Jesus is saying, you're straining out the gnat. There's a whole bunch of gnats around right now, because it rained and it's pretty much get ready for it, Iowa people. We're going to have them all summer. You're going to be running, going for a jog and swallowing gnats. You have a motorcycle, you're going to be getting gnats in your face or whatever. But Jesus is saying here, you're straining out a gnat, this tiny, tiny little insect, You're trying to strain it out of your drink, and that's what they would do because gnats would want to go swimming in their wine or their water. And he's saying, you're straining out this little gnat, you're focusing on this little minute thing, but in the process, you're swallowing a camel. Jesus saying you're neglecting the more important matters, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You're being judgmental jerks, maybe Jesus would say. You're so concerned about your own status and your own comfort, and you're looking down on others who aren't doing those things that you think are so important, that you're missing out on some really important things like justice, mercy, and faithfulness. So I want to speak to those of you Christians as we close here. Those of you who call yourself Christians, Jesus is talking about the religious leaders of that day. But what would others today who know that you're a Christian, who know that you go to church, what would they say about you? Have you left a bad taste in their mouth? I challenge you to make it right. Maybe you've been focusing on the little things, but you've been neglecting the bigger picture. And you've been a judgmental jerk. Now I want to take a moment to speak to those of you who have had a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to Christians or church or pastor or any of those number of things. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. You know, you've had this bad taste in your mouth, and it takes a lot of courage to be able to say, okay, I'm going to give it a little taste again. Maybe it's better this time, right? But I want to remind you, speaking to those of you with a bad taste in your mouth from church people, don't mix the mean, hurtful things that church people have said to you. Don't confuse them with Jesus, because you're not alone. In fact, Jesus is bothered by the same things you're bothered by. But I also want to challenge you, don't fall into the same judgmental trap. Don't assume that every Christian is like those who've hurt you or have left a bad taste in your mouth. And here's a promise I want to give to you. As the pastor of this particular church, we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be real. In fact, you can count on us to be pursuing this life that Jesus calls us to live and this attitude Jesus calls us to live. Will you pray with me? God, we all admit that we need you. And so I ask that you would please align our hearts with the things that you value. May we be more like Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen. Hey, before you go, I would love to hear from you. Just a little shout out saying, hey, I'm watching this video, or hey, like this was a moment where a Christian left a bad taste in my mouth. I'd just love to hear from you. You can actually just email me. Super simple email address, andy@fayette.church. Just as simple, andy@fayette.church. In fact, we'd love to connect with you. Just say, hey, I've been watching this, and we'd love to send you a free gift. Just as our way of saying, hey, thanks for making yourself known. And so I really appreciate it. I'm not going to come to your door, and I'm not going to hound you or send you a million texts. But it's just a way of saying, you know, we're glad that you've joined us. And I'm so thankful that you're joining us, and I really hope to get to be able to see you soon in person. Have an awesome week, and God bless.